Greetings. Welcome to the Dr. J Vlog series. It's Thursday, March 6th, 2025. And on Thursdays, we look into knowledge and science. Today's topic, snakes. What do you think about snakes? Fascinating creature, wouldn't you agree? There are almost 4,000 different known species of snakes across the planet. Most are quite harmless, and naturally, they're much more afraid of humans and other predators than vice versa. But about 10% are constrictor-type snakes, like boa constrictors and pythons. And about 1 in 3 known species are venomous, although many of these are not actually dangerous to a level that would be harmful to humans. There are, of course, the usual suspects. We have to worry about the rattlesnakes, or the copperheads, and the cottonmouths, and the coral snakes. But these are more prominent only in certain parts of the country, certain regions of the world. And children are often educated at an early age to be a bit more cautious around those that they might encounter. Growing up in Virginia, for example, we were not a haven for a diverse array of snakes. There seem to be about 30 different species or so in my home state, only 3 known venomous breeds. Only once do I recall as a youngster, and that was a big deal, encountering a venomous snake. Someone had found a copperhead, and we all came running over. And I don't remember who exactly, but someone made the executive decision. The snake was already distressed to kill the snake with a shovel. And that was considered to be the humane thing to do because the animal was already suffering, so there was that issue. And then again, the fact that it was a poisonous snake for the general safety of the public. Yet many people fear snakes. To the point where they have severe anxiety or panic should they encounter snakes. This fear of snakes is known as Ophidiophobia. Estimates suggest that about 2 to 3% of the population suffer from Ophidiophobia. Yet, even though most of us can handle encounters with snakes, there's an almost perverse tendency, amongst some at least, to kill snakes that they encounter, especially on their properties, even though they might actually be quite harmless. And in fact, they're typically good for pest control, rodent control, and they're a crucial feature in terms of local ecosystems. So to be fair, in some cases, that there might be legitimate concerns about some kind of poisonous snake in one's hood, and there may be reason then to kill or at least to relocate that particular snake. The problem is that many folks are not educated enough, myself included, to always be able to distinguish between the poisonous and the non-poisonous, the dangerous and the not dangerous snakes. So how can you tell the difference? Well, there are 2 types of venomous snakes, the vipers and the elapids. So vipers are the rattlesnakes and the copperheads that we've probably all heard of, may have seen, or at least seen on screen or in the encyclopedia. And these have vertical pupils. They're much like kitty cats in that sense. And they have triangular shaped heads. The elapids, like the coral snakes, have round pupils, and they have these brightly colored bands and a distinctive system of black, yellow, and red. So most of us then are not likely to encounter these snakes, or certainly during our daily routines. Reason being, snakes are mostly nocturnal, at least in the sense that that's when they're typically hunting their prey. And what's happened in recent years, though, is that there's been this increased concern in terms of certain species of snakes that are at risk of extinction because of the destructions of their natural habitats, the illegal trade that some people engage in. In some instances, there are diseases that are spreading through the snake populations. And most important for today's vlog, the persecution by humans out of fear and ignorance. So what's the underlying cause of this aversion to snakes? Well, according to Emily Willingham, the author of the 2021 book, The Tailored Brain, I'll leave a link to some of her work in the description below, researchers believe that primates may have developed an innate fear of snakes especially those that were preyed upon by the constrictor-type snakes. And what's fascinating, too, is that the research suggests that infants quite enjoy looking at images of snakes or snake-like movements, but mainly out of a sense of curiosity rather than fear. Instead, it would seem that our cultural experiences directly shape the innate abilities that we have to detect snakes into a potential phobia. And so Willingham argues then that if the fear of snakes reflects a learned behavior, then that can be unlearned, at least in principle. And guess what we've actually started to do to combat the fear of snakes, and dare I say, the prejudices that people have towards snakes? Precisely the two things that reduce, if not eliminate, the fears and the prejudices that people have towards other groups of people unlike themselves. That is to say, the spread of knowledge and increased contact. So I'll briefly elaborate upon both of these principles. So we've all heard the expression that knowledge is power. Knowledge of snakes, then, can be used to empower people and turn their fear into fascination. People have started Facebook groups, for example, for snakes, snake lovers, or just to educate the general public about snakes. And these are typically places or communities where people can send in photos, for example, if they've encountered snakes on their properties. And experts can then help them identify what type of snake it is through their markings, etc. This has been helpful and useful as a way of, as I say, educating the public and increasing their familiarity with snakes. Of course, it's tough, too, because of the stereotypes associated with our language and the use of the word snakes in the popular imagination. The fact remains that calling someone a snake, for instance, tends to be quite pejorative, quite negative, or an expression of revulsion, or quite often mistrust. That is, that you've encountered some kind of a poisonous person. The other key factor would be contact or habituation. The exposure to the object of our fears, such as snakes, but especially in a safe and supportive environment, can fundamentally change our attitudes and lived experiences with snakes or anything else. And that growing familiarity with snakes gradually helps to inoculate people against their fears. We live with cats and dogs, for example, many of us, most of us in fact, and we're quite comfortable and habituated around these, or among most of these species. Some people have pet snakes too, but perhaps only 1/10 as many as who have cats and dogs. But like our siblings and our other pets, if we can give the snakes on our property a name, learn something about them, usually we'll find that that's a much more rewarding prospect, and we're likely to grow and even appreciate having most of them around, at least most of the time. Again, kind of like our siblings. All right, until next time, may you and yours continue to create peace in your lives and nurture love in your hearts, and maybe give a snake a hug today before it hugs you. Kidding. All right, have a good one. We'll see you next time.